So, the double standards when it comes to world politics is something that I think most of us are going to be aware of, particularly when it comes to certain nations in the Middle East who are going to be mentioned in this video, so there's no point in me self-muting here. This is an interview between Mehdi Hassan and this guy Danny Ayalon, who's a former Israeli minister. And I wanted to just kind of do a quick reaction to it because it just highlights the hypocrisy that exists in modern global politics. And it's just important for us to be aware of how much inequity exists between the different nations of this earth, and actually how it's been historically the most belligerent, the most violent, and the most troublesome people, the allies, so to speak, who would be taught were the good guys, but they weren't the good guys, they're just the guys that won, all right? That's the irony, okay? Are the good guys of this tale. And in reality, if you look at their behavior since, before, prior to, and currently, it's always been the most barbaric, it's always been the most malevolent, it's always been the most genocidal. These people there's no limit to the things they will and won't do. There's literally no limit to the things that they'll do. So this interview anyway, I just thought was really interesting, and I thought I'd just kind of like share it with you guys and react to it.
As of today?
Right now, I hope none.
Okay, how many does Israel have?
So he asked how many. The first question I got cut off because I had to refresh and there's no rewind here, was how many nuclear weapons does Iran have as of today? And
no idea.
No, he said, so the answer was none to Iran. The answer was none. Okay.
No idea? You were in the government. They don't tell you that stuff.
No idea.
Who do they tell?
No idea.
Do you recognize the hypocrisy of Israel having a secret illicit nuclear weapons program that it won't open up its doors to and won't talk about, and then lecturing everyone else in the region about nuclear weapons?
Absolutely not. You know why?
Absolutely not. There's no hypocrisy. There's absolutely not. Everyone else should tell. We in this country, we don't need to tell anybody. Absolutely not. Why should we be telling anybody? This is the kind of ludicrous world we live in, and it's important that we tune our ears, because this kind of messaging is what we get over and over and over again. It's like they'll show you some news article of one person being killed, and you're supposed to be, you get outraged and how can this happen? And then the next news article, they'll talk about 30,000 people were killed in a recent bombing raid conducted by NATO and blah blah blah, and you'll be like, oh yeah, they probably deserved it. It's like, what? You have to tune yourself to really understand some of the things that are taking place in this world are very, very unjust, and this is just one of them.
You talked about hypocrisy. If an Iranian guest came on my show and I asked him about Iran's nuclear program, he said, I don't know, I'm not going to talk about it. Would you be okay with that? You'd be outraged.
Of course I would.
And you sit here as a former minister of the Israeli government saying, I don't know, never talked about nuclear with anyone.
Because there was like 16 United Nations Security Council resolutions against Iran.
And there is against Israel. And there is against Israel as well.
And to be clear, I don't care about United Nations resolutions, okay? Because everybody knows a lot of these world governing agencies, United Nations, NATO, etc., they all sit within the palm of the West. Essentially, they are Western agencies that make it look like there's this kind of like unified voting force, but ultimately we all know that it's the superpowers, the Western superpowers, that govern the discussions, that govern the decisions that take place under these governing bodies. So I don't care about that. The bottom line is, what's clearly being highlighted here is that we have one nation that has been nothing but a belligerent factor since it was established on terrorism. A lot of people don't talk about that fact. Okay, this nation was established on terrorism. Terrorism against the British, by the way. I don't know if many of you know this story, but the very first acts of terrorism were bombing raids carried out by people from this nation against British MPs who were staying in Israel. They used to bomb the British MPs because they wanted to bomb Britain into submission, into supporting their claim to have land and claim to expand. And you read about it, it's very, very, very harrowing and interesting, but that is the origins of terrorist attacks. This nation conducting them against British MPs in Israel, or in the what was then Palestine. Okay, in a peaceful nation, by the way. Palestine was a peaceful nation in which Jews already lived, but the ones that were there were the ones that had nothing to do with the ones that are there currently, the dark-skinned ones. As I think it was Nasser, who was it? Was it? I don't think it was Anwar Sadat. I think it was President Nasser, who said that the Palestinians or the Jews in Palestine were black people. Okay, and they lived side by side, and they were totally fine with each other. They used to go to each other's house, the Muslims, this, that, and the other. They had just like most of the Middle East, by the way. This whole idea of extremist Islam is an invention of the West. Most of the Middle East, the most extremist Islamic nations were actually the Gulf states, the new ones. So things like, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Dubai, all of those nations that have been empowered now as a result of the removal of the old guard. The old guard, which was Iran, Iraq, Syria, Libya, all of these nations have always been historically far more secular, far more accepting of, different religions all existing under one governorship. That was always the case. And now we have this real shift towards extremism. And this, Saudi Arabia is another one that they support. These small extremist nations, are the ones that are backed by the West. I mean, it's very, very confusing and convoluted kind of history that exists in that region. But the point of the matter is, this nation here that is trying to dictate to everybody how they should behave themselves in that region is the one that has never had good behavior, has historically had the worst behavior in the world, probably the worst behaving nation other than the US and the UK. I would say maybe, and France as well, in the world. Okay, no, and look at this guy. This guy is a pure 100% European. Okay, there's nothing Middle Eastern about this guy, but obviously they've sold this phenotype to the world and said that this phenotype belongs in the Middle East, and it doesn't. This guy's a pure Russian. But anyway, let's carry on. And I guarantee you that's not his name, Danny Ayalon. I guarantee you that's one of their inherited names. I like names like Ayalon and Shalom and this, that, and the other. His name's probably Danny Boris Rajevich or Danny Blishvachich, like something like that. They all changed their name.
About your nuclear program. No. Yes, there is. UN Resolution 487. Let me read it to you. The UN Security Council in 1981 calls upon Israel urgently to place its nuclear facilities under the safeguards of the IAEA. Why haven't you done that?
Because Iran has never attacked.
Anyway, she said because we don't take orders from anybody. That's what he wanted to say. Because we don't take UN resolution for who? We are the chosen people of the earth, and we will decide what is resolved and what's not resolved.
Attacked a neighbor. Israel has repeatedly attacked its neighbors. Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel has refused to sign. Iran submits to inspection by the International Nuclear Energy Agency. Israel refuses to submit. Iran has no nuclear weapons. Israel has between 75 and 400 nuclear weapons. So Israel poses an existential threat to Iran.
I would say Israel itself is fatigued with pretending they care about what other people in the world think. They don't care. And I think they're bored now of pretending that they do care. They're kind of like, well, what do we... Who the freak cares what you gotta say? Like, we're gonna do what we do anyway. We own everything. We own the media. We own everything, and we'll do what we do, and then we'll spin it in our favor once we've done it, which is what they've done historically.
Why the double standards? Why the hypocrisy?
Okay. How many nuclear weapons does Iran have as of?
So I mean, there you go. It's a very short video, but I just thought it was interesting and important to watch, because it just highlights once again the fact that there's never been equality in the way that nations are viewed, people are viewed, ethnicities are viewed. There's always been a hierarchy, and seemingly sitting at the top of the hierarchy is this very nation. that we're talking about today. They seem to sit atop of this hierarchy of man, so to speak. And it's really ironic that even when we think about, let's talk about the last 100 years. Do you know that the behavior of genocide can literally be isolated to a few countries, a few allied nations? Yeah, they're the only ones who have committed like real genocides. I'm not talking about, you know, a couple of thousand people being killed here and there. Okay, people over Rwandan, they like to throw that word on African conflicts, for instance. As bad as many of them were, they weren't genocides. You know, the Biafran War was not a genocide. What happened in Rwanda was not a genocide. Was it horrendous? Yes. Do we need less of it? Absolutely. But a genocide is what King Leopold done in the Congo. A genocide is what happened in the Americas. A genocide is what the British did in Tasmania. A genocide is what the Spanish did in the Philippines. I mean, we have genocide after genocide after genocide committed by these people. A genocide is what's currently happening in Palestine. And it's just very interesting how they've convinced the world that they are the ones who are the most trustworthy. They're the only ones who can be trusted with military power. No. Okay, they want to control, you know, nuclear programs are nothing more than them being able to control the political power and the ability for other nations to self-govern. It's nothing to do with them being the most trustworthy, because history has shown us only one nation in history has actually used a nuclear weapon, and that nation is the one that currently runs the world. It's America. Okay. And there's a whole other story about why Hiroshima and Nagasaki were targeted, and actually whether or not it was done in cahoots with the Japanese government to put into place what we have today in Japan. But that's a whole nother story and a whole nother discussion that I'm not going to go into today. But I just want to share that with you. I hope you found it interesting, relatively informative. You could check out Mehdi Hassan's channel. He does have some interesting talks on there. I don't agree with all of his political outlooks, but I think he's a well-positioned and normally very well-informed individual who will argue against the likes of nations like Israel and do it quite well. So in that regard, he gets my vote. Hope you've enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one, guys. Peace.